Hello and welcome back to Transfermarkt and to another of our daily transfer news live streams. There's some big stories to talk about this morning as Arsenal and Tottenham battle it out for a Bundesliga star, and Aston Villa look to take a star from one of their Premier League rivals. I'm delighted to say again I'm joined by Ewan this morning. Ewan, how are you feeling?
Yeah, not too bad. Not all things considered, it being a Monday, but looking forward to getting going this morning.
Yeah, excited to get back into the transfer news. It was an exciting weekend of action, but let's look at what's going on behind the scenes and off the pitch at the moment. And we do start with the news that Arsenal and Tottenham are potentially battling it out for that Bundesliga star. Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest are also involved in this, with the four clubs interested in Borussia Dortmund's English winger Jamie Gittens. It is said that the German club would want more than £50 million for the player if they're to consider selling him. It's been a brilliant start to the season for Gittens. He has 7 goal contributions in 10 games this season, which includes 2 goals and 1 assist in the Champions League. Ewan, what are your thoughts on this story off the bat?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's always inevitable when a player does well in the Bundesliga that he'll be linked to Premier League clubs, and especially in Gittens' case when he is English. He came through. I think it was Reading before he went to Manchester City's academy. He didn't quite make the grade there, and then he moved on to play in Dortmund in Germany. And it seemed this is his real breakthrough season. I know last season he was kind of in and out of the team, but with Dortmund kind of changing some players in the attacking areas, he's someone that's really kind of rose to prominence this season. They've got loads of talented young players. Adiemi's had a really good season, especially in the Champions League, and Gittens is a really interesting player. I think Dortmund will be quite relaxed about this. You mentioned their kind of asking fee. I think he's valued at 35 million euros on our site, and his contract runs until 2028, so there'll be no pressure to sell the player. So I can't see this happening in January. Maybe one for next summer, and clubs will maybe look at see how he does across the course of the season. But yeah, he's a really good talent. He's really impressed this season.
Yeah, for sure. Looking at it from the Premier League aspect, I think with all due respect to Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest, if Arsenal or Spurs are in for the player, I think it's between the two of them for the race. But I think they're both sides that should be looking to bring in a left winger for Tottenham. They've extended Timo Werner's loan for this season, and it's not quite working out. Son has of course been brilliant out in the left, but as his age, as he pushes on in age, he's a bit more injuries kind of coming into his career, and also Tottenham will want to forward plan a little bit. You can see why they might look at a player like Jamie Gittens, and a big problem for Postecoglou's side has been a player who's good 1v1 out on the wing, and that's something where Gittens is fantastic. His take on numbers are superb. His dribbling and progressive numbers are absolutely fantastic. And then you look at Arsenal, Gabriel Martinelli just hasn't quite hit that height over the last maybe year or so that he did in the early stages of his Arsenal career. So for me, it's no surprise that those two could be looking at a left winger, but I'm sure it'll all come down to how much Borussia Dortmund actually ask for Gittens. As you said, of course, a former Manchester City academy player, not the first English winger that's made that move from Man City's academy to Borussia Dortmund, and maybe it could be another one on the way back to the Premier League. The next one I want to chat about is Aston Villa, and they've reportedly entered the race for the Cameroonian forward Bryan Mbeumo from Brentford, and he's had a fantastic start to the season. We were just talking off air there beforehand, Ewan, that his numbers have been absolutely fantastic. He's got 6 goals in 8 Premier League games this season. He's one of the players who scored a couple of those famous early goals that Brentford have become known for this season. And what impressed me most in his stats for this season is in the 8 games he's played, he's scored in 5 of them. The 3 games he hasn't scored in have been against Liverpool, Manchester United and Manchester City, which isn't exactly a bad thing for a forward playing in a team who last year were looking over their shoulders a little bit towards the relegation zone. I think with the quality of that Brentford squad, maybe that's not where they deserve to be. But Mbeumo's a player who's just been so crucial for them, was brilliant for Cameroon in a few international tournaments as well. I think for me, maybe there's an element of surprise that's where Aston Villa are focusing their sights at the moment in terms of the area of the pitch, because they have some absolutely outstanding players. John Duran is getting better and better. Of course, there's Ollie Watkins and a number of wingers and maybe kind of number 10s in there as well that are fantastic for them. Do you think it's an area that Aston Villa should be looking to add depth? And if so, do you think Bryan Mbeumo is the right player to do that for them?
Yeah, they've also got Watkins and Durant. Really interesting across the course of the season to see who becomes Aston Villa's main number 9. I think it will be Ollie Watkins. He's certainly got it at the moment, but Duran's form this season, scoring off the bench is incredible, and he's really pushing. So to bring in a third striker, would be interesting and perhaps a little bit surprising. But Mbeumo can play off the right as well. He can probably play off the left. He's not done that in his career too much, if at all, based on memory. But certainly can play off the right. I think he's one of the most underappreciated players in the Premier League since making the step up with Brentford. If you look at his attacking numbers, it's 49 goals and assists, 106 games in the Premier League for a club who predominantly has kind of been bottom half, or I think they finished ninth as their highest finish under Thomas Frank. So to put up those attacking numbers for a club like Brentford is really incredible. He has probably been under the radar at times just due to Ivan Toney's presence. He also had a slight injury last season as well, but he's an incredible player, and I think if he keeps performing at this level, then Brentford will get serious interest in the player. I don't imagine that Aston Villa will be the only club looking at Mbeumo, and you forget he's only 24 years old as well. People probably think he's a little bit older than that, but he's a great age. I think he's a top player. I think he can definitely go make a step up to a team who are going to be in European football. I think it's a matter of time until he does that, and Villa would be a good level of club, I think, for him to move to, but I don't think they'll be the only club interested. He's been linked with various of the biggest Premier League clubs before.
I think I would be quite worried for Brentford as well if they did lose him. I mean, losing Ivan Toney in the summer, it wasn't the biggest loss because they got used to not having him with the ban that he had for the majority of last season. But Mbeumo, like you said, those numbers that he's put up in the Premier League has been absolutely incredible, and I think he doesn't get as much credit as he deserves because, like I said, people forget how young he is. I think people kind of just had this general consensus or idea that he is a little bit older, but when you look at those numbers and consider the fact that he is an inexperienced player, he's a younger player, I think it's even more impressive that he's managed to put those numbers up. But he's become that main man for Brentford, and there seems to be a lot of chopping and changing of those players that play around him in that front line, and he just seems to be that consistency in there that Brentford can rely on game in, game out. It's just about getting the best out of those other players around him. Like Yohan Wissa has, of course, a lot of potential. You see younger players like Fabio Carvalho, Keane Lewis Potter as well. How much can they actually get out of him if Mbeumo isn't in that squad? That'll be the question that Thomas Frank will be looking to answer if they do end up losing the Cameroonian. Everton are also interested in a new forward for January, and they're reportedly plotting a move for AC Milan and Nigeria winger Samuel Chukwueze in the January transfer window. He's a player who hasn't had the greatest start to the season. He's struggling for minutes with AC Milan in Serie A, only one goal so far this season and no assists if I remember correctly. I think everyone can agree that Everton do need to strengthen. The season has kind of come to them a little bit so far, but after a very, very poor start. What do you think about this link for Everton, Ewan?
It's one that's been there in the past. As a deal, in terms of a deal, it looks like quite an easy one to do from Everton's point of view. I would be surprised if this is a loan deal in January with like an option to buy in the summer. That seems to be a pretty fair way to do this deal because I think AC Milan would let him go. I think he's only started 3 games this season. Most of his minutes have come off the bench. Since making the move to AC Milan from Villarreal back last summer, he's not really hit the ground running. He's not put up incredible numbers. I think it's 7 goal contributions in 42 games. It was that £20 million fee. So I can see this deal being done in January on a loan with an option to buy. It seems like a pretty logical move for both parties. I think Everton do need to strengthen their wide areas. Their last 2 games, 2 clean sheets and 2 positive results. So, they had a horrendous start to the season, but Sean Dyche was famous for kind of building a strong defence. I think Everton was the 5th best defence in the Premier League last season in terms of goals conceded. Jared Branthwaite coming back into the sides made a massive difference. So if they can have that kind of solid defence and look to improve in the attacking areas, then I think they'll be okay this season. I don't really see Everton in real relegation trouble like maybe people were kind of framing at the start of the season, just due to how bad their form was and how many goals they were losing.
And I think this is potentially a clever deal to go for because, like we said, Chukwueze hasn't been his best since he went to AC Milan. But I think in situations like this, when you see a drop off of form when a player makes a transfer, I think you need to look at what they can do. And Chukwueze's numbers in that last season at Villarreal were were really good. I think he averaged a goal contribution every 2 games with a team that isn't exactly going to be challenging for the title in that competition. So the quality is definitely in there. And Everton will be hoping if they do get that deal done that they can extract that from him on a little bit of a more consistent basis. To another player who might not be as well known, Ewan, and it's Nico Paz of Como in Serie A, and the reports are that Arsenal, Juventus, AC Milan and Napoli are among the clubs watching the Argentinian midfielder. He's just 20 years of age, and I think an important one to note in this is he actually moved from Real Madrid to Como in the summer for €6 million, and Real Madrid do have a buyback clause in that deal, and that's one that's been rumoured to already this early on in the season that Madrid are potentially exploring the opportunity they have to bring him back. But what can you tell us about this player and why these big teams around Europe might be interested in him?
Yeah, he's a fantastic talent. He actually made his Argentina debut just last month as well, and he assisted Lionel Messi in that game, which is a nice thing to do when you make your international debut as an Argentinian, because he's obviously the hero that's kind of carried that side for so many years. But I watch a lot of Italian football, and Paz has settled in really well into Como under Cesc Fabregas. 4 goal contributions in 7 games. They're doing quite well after the promotion last season. I think they're sitting at 14th in the table. And Paz is a technically brilliant player. He's an attacking midfielder. He's really good in the ball. He's so calm in possession. Picks up really good positions. And like you mentioned, yeah, he made the move from Real Madrid in the summer. I think the fee was around about €6 million. But I think the likelihood was always that Madrid could and probably would bring him back at some point. They had that buyback option, from reports in Marca in Spain. They've scouted him in every single game this season. There's also interest from other clubs, but what I'd imagine happening here is that if your likes of Arsenal or Tottenham or your big English clubs come in with an interest and look to get him for a relatively modest fee, then I think Madrid would maybe activate that clause to buy him back, and then even potentially then sell him on to the English club themselves for a much higher fee, because Madrid in the transfer market over the last 5-10 years have been incredible. One of the best sides in Europe in terms of how much they spend and how they bring in players and how much they sell players for. So they're really good in the transfer market. Paz is an exceptional talent. I can see him becoming a real, prominent player across Europe's top 5 leagues in the next, 2 to 3 years.
And Nico Paz did get an upgrade in our Serie A market value update on Friday. His market value was upgraded from 10 million to 15 million, which I think tells you that he has made quite a good start to life at Como in the Serie A. Back to the Premier League for our final story, and Tottenham defender Radu Dragusin is reportedly considering leaving the club in January due to a lack of playing time. Napoli are one of several Serie A clubs interested. Former Tottenham manager Antonio Conte, of course, flying in the Serie A with Napoli. And it's not a new story. Of course, Dragusin signed for Tottenham in January. There was competition there from Bayern Munich, but he made the move to North London and has really struggled for game time since then. This season, he's played just 99 minutes in the Premier League. That includes 90 minutes in a game where Mickey van de Ven was injured, so Tottenham really had no choice but to play Radu Dragusin. He also featured in the cup game against Coventry and started their first Europa League game, but was sent off after just 7 minutes. So kind of was given the opportunity, and it didn't go quite well for him there. And I think the issue facing Radu Dragusin, it's not one that he wouldn't have expected. When you make that move to Tottenham in January, Christian Romero and Mickey van de Ven are Ange Postecoglou's first choice. They're two players that complement each other very well. Romero is one of the vice captains at the club. He's a leader. Van de Ven, his recovery pace is absolutely crucial to the way that Tottenham play. So I think Dragusin going there would have expected to have these issues, but maybe where I think any frustration in his game time could be coming from is maybe he just trusted in himself that he was able to displace them. Maybe he thought he might get 1 or 2 opportunities in the Premier League that he could have taken that just haven't been afforded to him. And I wouldn't blame Postecoglou and Tottenham for that, because defensively we know Tottenham have been quite frail in certain games, and I think they've conceded the same amount of goals this season as Manchester City, but the problem that Tottenham have is when they concede goals, they concede 3 to Brighton, and if you lose 3-2 and win a game 1-0, defensively you don't look that bad, but you're not picking up the points that you need. Do you think Dragusin has a right to be frustrated with this game time, Ewan, or is he just faced with something that does happen quite often where there's just 2 incredible centre-backs ahead of him?
Yeah, I don't think he does. He's got 2 better players ahead of him in the pecking order, so it's quite natural to what's happened. I think Van de Ven and Romero are amongst the best centre backs in the Premier League. Tottenham defence isn't always rock solid, but a lot of that's down to how Ange Postecoglou likes to play. He's a very attacking front foot manager. Spurs will always play 4 at the back under Postecoglou, so it's not as if like under Conte or previous managers might move to a back 3, and that would help Dragusin with his game time. If he goes in January, or it'll be a loan deal, I imagine, Tottenham need to bring someone else in, because they've only really got 3 real kind of first team centre backs. They've obviously got Ben Davies that can play there. I know they've got a couple of younger talents who I think are out on loan at the moment, but they need to bring someone else in to replace him. You can't go for the second half of the Premier League season, not obviously being in Europe again this season as well. The Tottenham are, they weren't last season with 3 centre backs. I think it was a risk going into the season with so few options there. Because we've seen, I think Van de Ven had a hamstring problem last season. If you look at his running style and the runs that he goes on and embarks on, his recovery pace, he's going to push his hamstrings. So that's always a kind of a risk. So I thought it was a risk going into the season with 3 centre backs. I know Ben Davies can cover there, but he's not a player that I think Ange Postecoglou would want to use there, unless it was an emergency. So I think we need to look at that area of the pitch in January window regardless. If Dragusin goes, and I think that you could even bring in 2 in January, which seems quite crazy. But it's an area of the Spurs would definitely be looking at going into the January window.
I think if they do end up with a couple of injuries there, I think for me Archie Gray would be the first player that they'd look to fill in that position, which just says everything you need to know about
Big risk, yeah.
Absolutely. I think he's just maybe better on the ball and a bit more pace than someone like Ben Davies. Regarding the structure of the deal, I do completely agree with you that if he is going to leave Tottenham, it would have to be on a loan deal, because in this modern era of long contracts, when you sign a new player, Dragston potentially looking to leave, he's got 6 years left on his deal at Tottenham. He's there until 2030. It's going to take a lot of money for anyone to convince Tottenham to end that contract at this point. But let's wait and see how it pans out. Like you said, an injury to anyone and Dragson's fortunes could completely turn around, and I think he will have the confidence that he was just so incredible at Euro 2024 with Romania that maybe once he does get that opportunity again this season, that he can convince Ange Postecoglou to give him a bit more game time. But do let us know in the live chat and in the comments down below your thoughts on Dragson's future. Do also let us know what you think about Jamie Gittens and Bryan Mbeumo, the two big stories from this morning. Could they be on the move in the January or indeed the summer transfer window next up? If you do want more of these live streams, we'll be live every morning at 10 a.m. UK time. Do hit that subscribe button down below, hit the notification bell so you get notified every time we go live, and you can get involved in the live chat and let us know. We'll also have some more videos coming out during this week with Ben, so make sure to subscribe for those as well. Hit the like button if you have enjoyed this live stream, and from myself